Yay. Well, here I am with Ruth Anne Wood. And Ruth is the founder of Scripting for Success. And I have an immediate question for you, Ruth. Do you go by Ruth or Ruth Ann or both?
I like both, but Ruth during an interview is perfect.
Great. That's awesome. And today, Ruth and I are going to be talking about um, AI. I've been hearing in my little circle of the world, people are anxious about it. They think it's going to I think people are afraid it's going to take the humanity out of our world in some way. Or there are people that are living in fear of it. So, Ruth and I are going to be talking about AI. But before we do, can you tell me, Ruth, just a little bit about what is scripting for success and what is it that you do in that arena?
Definitely, but I do want to say something. I'm very new to AI, and I just started working with it in the last month. And I discovered that it's our opportunity right now to tell the story we want to tell and have AI learn it. So what we're putting out there is we're really creating this whole platform. So if you think it's too gender biased or social biased or whatever it is, it's because we need our voices out there to create the input that we want to see in the world. So it's
That
really, people aren't talking about that part of it. And I basically, I belong to a United Nations task force. The people that sent me to China back in 2018, I do work with them. Every Thursday we meet to talk about how we can further our program to help. We've trained over 1,600, I don't know, it's a big number, of men and women in different countries to be future leaders. And some of these are small girls in villages that then become capable at communicating and transforming their whole family dynamics. So that was very much in alignment with the work that I do for the last 20 years, which the tagline started out as "Get your dreams out of the drawer," because my background started helping people write and publish books. And it also helped them write their success scripts of what they want to create in their relationships as well as in their careers. And so in the last 2 years, I've really explored working with charities and nonprofits, two in particular, Twilight Wish Foundation, that grants wishes for seniors, and it started here locally in our hometown. And then has gone national. So I was honored to become a board of director. And it really aligned with the mission of helping people express themselves, helping people live their dreams, helping people step into their life purpose, their mission, their happily ever after stories. So that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And in the last 2 years, I've found charities to align with.
Wow, I know that people listening would kill me. Well, maybe they wouldn't kill me, but they would be irritated if I didn't ask, um, can you elaborate just a little bit? You said the United Nations Task Force and the group that sent you to China. Can you just tell me quickly who sent you to
Yeah.
China and for what?
So it was one of those synchronistic moments. I went to the local Bucks County library and I picked out two biographies. I had been on a streak where I just let the books jump off the bookshelf, and I'd been listening to a number of not podcasts. Remember those things called books on tape or books
Yes,
on
yes.
CD before podcasts?
Audiobook. Yeah, yeah.
So I would like stick the CD in my old car. I don't have a CD player in my new car now. And I would listen to all these different like science fiction and sci-fi and adventure stories. And then I started getting into biographies. And I had listened to the 7 years, I forget the title, but it was an amazing story on the 17 years of Nelson Mandela in prison, and how he overcame all that by being respectful to his guards and everyone he dealt with, even though, since he was Afro-American, or no, he was Black in South Africa, he had to sleep naked 10 of those years
Wow.
out of just belittling, dehumanizing the person, and had to do hard labor for those first 10 years. Meanwhile, he's treating these people with dignity and eventually becomes a leader of his nation, the first Black man in his South African country. So I started listening to biographies like this, and then two popped off the shelf. One was by Carol Burnett, who you might have remembered her creating a whole Hollywood Broadway production every week. I mean, she's super talented in the arts. And then there was the other biography that popped off the shelf on Gloria Steinem, who was one of the creators of Miss Magazine. And so I listened to those two biographies, and I wrote in my journal, like on a Google Doc page, I want to be like these women. I want to go to the other side of the world, and I want to teach women's leadership. I want to have talking circles. I want to do theater. I want, and I let it go. Well, 2 weeks later, I got an email from someone that had interviewed me about my first co-authored book. I shouldn't say it's the first, but it's the first like self-published book that I did with a figure skater blind since birth. And he skated with local and world-class figure skaters. He's a local named Stosh Seraphin, just had his 70th birthday last week. And anyway, my point here is that he and I had been on this author show from a lady out in Arizona named Danielle. And she said, I belong to this organization that teaches World Academy leadership skills all around the world, schools in China and Bangladesh, and Nepal and India. And I was thinking, wow, that would be amazing to connect with this organization. And they said they were looking for facilitators, people that volunteer for 6 whole weeks of their busy lives and go to a foreign country where they don't know the language, integrate with the children or the young adults, the college students, this university students, and share their personal stories while teaching this curriculum. So like, my husband's like, it looks like a scam. Don't do it. And
Wow.
I did. I handed in my $90. I did a 1-page application. I created my resume of all the art projects and charity work and publishing work and just different things I've done over the last 20 years, 25 years. And this woman called me back like 2 days later, who has outlived 2 of her husbands, used to fly herself around the country as a businesswoman in a plane until her work told her to knock it off. Her name is Jerry Uberly, and she created this foundation called Global Interactions, which perfectly aligned with the thing I wanted to do, which was teach leadership around the world.
Wow.
And so it started out with me writing a little story of what I wanted to be when I grew up, while I was in the middle of doing 8 hours of massages at a local franchise. And I was like, I want to be doing more leadership stuff. So it's very
Ruth,
interesting.
what gave you the faith? Like when Jason, when your husband said, I think this is a scam,
Yeah.
what gave you the faith to keep pursuing it?
The thing that always gives me the faith is when I write it down and I can see my exact words in the offer that comes to me. That happened when I met my husband on April Fool's Day, 2004. He was in love with me the first day. It took me 2 weeks later to look at the list I had written in counseling 2 years earlier, and it had everything that I wanted in a life partner. And getting to know Jason, I was like, wow, this is the guy I'm supposed to be with. So scripting for success is about helping people have faith, notice those synchronicities, notice those conversations, notice that commitment to yourself that you kind of ignore, and
Yeah.
say, all right, I'm going to jump because the signs are there. And I
Wow.
ask for
Okay, I just have to go back to your childhood because
oh
I'm sorry, Ruth. But it's just such an interesting way of living that not only have you created for yourself, but through scripting for success, you're creating for other people. I'm just
yeah.
so curious, like, where did this come from? What kind of a child were you? Do you mind sharing that?
I would love to. Thanks for asking. And if I'm talking too fast, it's just because I'm really excited. And when I was teaching in China, it took them 2 weeks for them to understand me because they wanted me to slow down. Um,
I'm a fast talker, so I can relate.
okay. Um, so my mother was raised Christian Science, which means that you focus on your thoughts and your words create dis-ease in the body. And my dad is an engineer from MIT. My mother's a writer, graduated from the University of Texas. They met at the checkout line of a Woolworth store because my mom will talk to anybody.
Sounds like
And
somebody I know.
and one story that ties in with that was I was like 4 or 5 before my brother came along at age 6 because I ordered a brother and my parents decided to give me one.
Nice.
Not
Maybe that was one of your early scripts.
It was. I learned about no return policy very early on. Um, and a little backstory is I was born an identical twin who passed on when I was a baby, like right before our second birthday. So I learned early on, like I started asking the why questions, like why am I here? Why do I have two of these Raggedy Ann dolls or lambs or whatever, stuffed animals? And where did my grandmother go that was my caretaker who died shortly after? So my mother was going through a lot of grieving. She had a lot of interest in self-help and personal development and spirituality. And so she passed that interest on to me at a very early age. And in Doyle Elementary, I started submitting short stories about my interest in time travel and twin connections. And none of my peers got it, but my teachers would always award me an honorable mention. And in the like from 4th grade to 6th grade. And when I looked back at 4th through 6th grade, I realized a lot of stories that I wrote had come true in my early teens and late teens and 20s. One story was about a girl who got awarded a scholarship right out of high school to travel the world and also study marine biology. And at age 19, my dad's mom, who had already traveled to almost 50 countries, as her mother and sister tragically died when my dad was a baby in a boat accident on vacation. And and she took the $2,000 insurance money and saved it. And she didn't have to work. My grandfather worked for Kodak as a chemical engineer with chemical film processing, and was there during the heyday in Rochester, New York. And so she was like instrumental in getting my love of travel. And I'm up to over 25 countries now.
Wow.
But she took me to Indonesia right after high school. And that tied in with my story of Julie and August. Julie was the marine biologist in my little short story in elementary school that had traveled the world and got a scholarship to do it. So like I can tie back like all these different little sparks of an idea for a story. And I go, how come I haven't finished writing all these stories? Well, I was too busy living them.
That's so interesting.
And then I did almost 2 years of Bucks County Community College, dropped out because it felt like 13th grade. And I had taken a weekend class on acupressure shiatsu massage, which used to be right in our hometown. And it was doing the theater and the massage and the writing, mostly the acupressure points, like what when I look at somebody or I hear somebody, I can tell what acupressure points or energy flow is out of balance. And so I married that technology with the writing. So every time I have someone write a short story or a news article or a contract or a social media post or whatever it is, and make sure that same energetic vibration is in the words. So if they write something down, they feel this whole jolt of electricity, of that sort of in love feeling, of that, oh, I just had an exciting conversation feeling. And so that is sort of the secret sauce of how I was able to take something that was very natural for me to write what I wanted in my future and have it grounded in science and grounded in over 4,000 year Oriental medicine technology and storytelling and stuff like that.
That's really fascinating. And it kind of dovetails into our conversation in AI. And by the way, I know that AI is a blanket, artificial intelligence is we're talking about it as it relates to writing and like chat GPT. We're not talking about, right now, for the purposes of this conversation, a robot coming in and doing our work for us or cleaning
But
our
that's
house.
happening. They're building that,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cars that drive themselves. But the thing that is causing a lot of furor in the conversations that I've been kind of participating in is this notion of chat GPT. And
Yeah.
it's what Hollywood screenwriters, it's part of that whole strike, they're saying, hey, we want to write, you can't use AI to write, or our movie producer saying to the writer, you can't integrate AI. And it feels like it's one of those things where, you can't push it away. Just like
Yeah.
any other technology, it's here. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, you as a writer, you as
Mhm.
somebody who's actually created your life through the written word in some ways, how do you feel about
Well, I was
ChatGPT now?
petrified, and parts of me still are. And it was only in the last month I've been courageous enough to even sign into Chat GPT. And
Mhm.
maybe it was after my husband said he's been a programmer all his career, computer programmer, application developer. And so he basically has typed in code into Chat GPT, and then instead of searching for different things on the internet, think of it as a search engine where it brought and then continued the coding. So, and I noticed that with my writing that it's not like it's just going to do stuff for you. You have to have a conversation with it. Um, so your ideas, it might not even understand. Like, I I made a list. So I first a couple weeks ago made a list of all the things that I do for people, helping them get clarity around their work, help them get over um, losses in their career and the conversations that still play in their mind, even though they've been successful, how to clear some of those energetically through their writing and setting a new focus. And so like Chat GPT wasn't like, oh, I know all about Ruth. I had to stick in my bio,
Mm.
which it cleaned up. It made me look really awesome. It made it look really organized. Um, it made it more user-friendly. It helped me create avatars of my ideal clients based on the 9 books that I created. and it suggested other things to write. Um, it's like what I've been doing since before ChatGPT, is recognizing patterns and then running with them.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was resistant too. And then a friend of mine, we were talking and she said, "Hey, here, look, I put what you're doing into Chat GPT. Here's a possible business plan for you."
Yeah.
And I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I, of course, went in to talk to Chat GPT, my new friend, to further identify who I am. And it really came up with um, a great cohesive product in a sense based upon my input, and I guess ChatGPT is corralling all of these. It's just like a really educated Google search
Yeah.
that's much
It talks to
more.
you in a way.
That's what.
It talks to you in a way.
That's right. Like you said when we were talking before, that it's almost like having a friend to brainstorm with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So it's interesting because it can be a tool. And I think I'm still understanding that. And even as a writer, we have our own voice
yeah.
when we write, but it can help. It can help with research. It can help, I don't know, it can help um, find sources of information to make sure we can't, contrary to popular belief in the news these days, you can't just make it up. We have to kind of research. And so it's really interesting. But I think what you were saying at the top of this conversation, Ruth, is also very interesting. It comes with, it is a reflection of who we are
Mm,
societally, right? So it comes with a set probably of biases to a certain extent because it is just corralling the information we put in.
right. And the different forums and conversations I've had with my United Nations consultancy task force through global interactions has been, this is the time right now, if women and different groups don't get into technology and don't get into this technology, we'll be left out of the conversation for maybe another century, if not longer,
Wow, that is a really,
because somebody
really
else is
important
putting in their
statement.
input.
I think that's a really powerful and an
It gives
important
me
statement.
chills, and it also also gives me a greater charge or mission to see how we can level the playing field or collaborate on the playing field or be
Yeah, that's
more
powerful. Can I ask you a question about your advice? If somebody's listening and they're listening to how you scripted your own success and your own powerful experiences that have shaped your life, if they said, "Ruth, one tip," would you share a tip
share
for
with.
them?
But one tip is write down what you're complaining about every morning before you go to social media, before you go to the news, before you check your text messages. Write down everything that you're thinking and feeling when you wake up, because sometimes we wake up with a lot of anger, frustration, fatigue, uh, brought from the day before.
And
Um,
then what do they do with that?
yeah, so they write it down and then they go back and they flip it into something positive.
Mm.
So they're retelling the story. So, for example, it could be, well, give me an example of something.
There are plenty of
Up.
yeah, there could be the example, "I'm alone in the world. I'm never going to find a life partner. I have a failed relationship. I lost my job. I don't have money. I'm sick." You know, the list is
So write all
endless.
those down and then maybe flip it to, but I see people that have found jobs, or I have seen people that have found relationships. I'm going to talk to this person today. I'm going to talk to that person.
Oh, nice.
It's sort of like another brainstorm that you're doing with your most amazing AI, which is in your brain, where your brain is finding solutions and other new dialogues to play in your day rather than focusing on the latest gloom and doom.
That's very wise.
Now, what I wanted to say was, you saw my product list in the last week of books that I co-authored with ChatGPT. Well, this morning I thought of one that encompasses everything we've been talking about with scripting for success. So my vision, and I hope that you and your audience can join me in it, is to actively co-author our ideal news, our ideal conversations, our ideal world, the way we see it, in our own news platform, and use my scripting technology to write positive headlines every day, write positive articles and stories and social media from the future of the life that we want. Why not have a news source or a media source that reflects the most powerful media on the planet, which is us talking to ourselves?
It's really fascinating.
So every day we have this Oprah station that has more cells and more audience members than Oprah has ever had, which is talking to every cell in our body and telling it what to focus on for the day. So if we can then in a group showcase what it is that we want to focus on and have some shared guidelines or rules of what to write about, so it is positive, so it doesn't push away what we want and then attracts what we want, wouldn't that be a powerful social media or even a small group community? Wouldn't that be
I
powerful?
love that. I love that.
And so I do have the rules I can share with you that I use with every client.
Can
I'll share them with you.
I would love it.
Oh. So write about what feels good. Use words that empower instead of push away what you want in your life. So there's different words, and they're pretty universal, but some of them are more specific to people. And that's why I have them read their stories out loud, because there might be a memory or a trigger that causes them to resist that job or whatever. So for example, you say, I will buy a new car or lease a new car when I land that job interview or when I get that job. Well, you're already putting conditions on that new car by saying you're not going to have it until you get that job. And I've had plenty of clients that thought they had to reach certain sales goals or certain achievements before they could have what they want. And I help them rewrite their story or their statement to then make it two separate things. So I'm enjoying my new car and I'm enjoying my new job. But you're not in charge of the order of how that shows up. And you're not pushing it off.
Right.
So the main thing that I help people do is to bring their ideal future, closer to the present moment. And that's by changing their vocabulary and looking at the words that put things off into the future, instead of putting it into that feeling of now. And when people read that future and they feel that mental and emotional belief that it's actually real, that's when they start noticing conversations, job opportunities, relationship opportunities, adventure opportunities that match their new focus.
Powerful. Question for you that as I'm listening to this is popping into my mind about your parents. It's so fascinating to me, Ruth, that you have a Christian Science writer married to an MIT scientist. That's so
they're not married for the last 25, 30 years, but they're still very influential in my life. They're opposite political views, Uh, so I tell them, please don't tag me in any of your debates because
Yeah. And then the interesting thing is then you are the product of this. How do those
brother, yes. Yeah.
yeah.
My
How does
brother's
that
a
play into kind of your viewpoint that maybe more mystical, maybe more creative, I'm not sure, side combined with maybe a more linear thought process? And how do you think that lands with you?
no, I think having my mom, even before, elementary school, help me write short stories and songs was very instrumental in me thinking that way. And then my father, being very analytical and linear, and I, to this day, I'm still trying to figure out how to communicate with him so he takes my work seriously and looks at the scientific approach behind helping people. And I
Yeah.
think I've won him over many times in helping him in his own personal life. Uh, and he
Yeah.
and it's just very interesting. Like he's also an investor and he's got me into doing investing and stuff. And I look at each word as an investment, each relationship as an investment that you can track using your daily journaling, your daily conversations with yourself before you interact with the world.
That's really interesting. That is really interesting. Okay. I'm going to do a little rapid fire, Ruth.
Okay.
Okay. Just a few questions. And sometimes I use the word favorite, which trips people up because it's just what's the favorite in that moment. So you've been to a lot of places.
Uh,
Favorite place?
I'll have to say my favorite trip was the 5 weeks that Jason and I took half a year to plan, and we went to India, Thailand, Cambodia, back to Thailand, Taiwan, and Japan. And we got to try different foods in each country, different money. Jason handled that. He's the engineer.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
Different ways of transportation. India is like going to a zoo on the highway. Everybody follows their own self-guided GPS compass. Uh,
Wow.
it's like a goat herder, pedestrian, motorcyclist with like a whole family on the back, a bus, and a car all trying to merge into one lane. That's
Oh,
how I
my Lord. I
describe
wouldn't do well.
I love the food in Thailand. I love the night kitchens where you can point to all the food and they just cook it up in front of you.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, I loved visiting my friends that grew up around here and my husband's um, cousin on a military base in Japan. We went to 3 places in Japan. Um, and I loved their sushi, of course, and I love their osans, which is hot springs outside looking up at the stars.
Oh, my gosh. That sounds so cool. That
Mhm.
sounds cool. Because I've never been to a hot spring. That's on my bucket list. Um,
It's my bucket list again, as if I had never gone. I love doing.
oh, it sounds so cool. So, favorite book?
Well, books that pop in my mind are over 30 years ago. One was Ishmael, about this man, I think his name was Daniel Quinn, the author, who had a whole conversation about humanity with a gorilla, meant telepathically.
Oh, that's
And I
interesting.
was so in love with it that I drew a picture of me as half monkey and half human.
Oh, Ruth, that's so cool.
And then I sent it to the author. And this was like, in the 90s. And I feel like we're going back to that again with us half human, half
I
AI.
agree. I really, oh, that's interesting. I was thinking of it in a different way because sometimes I think we're all evolutionarily at different spots. So sometimes we hear somebody does something or says something and we think, how can that possibly be? And you just think they're at a different evolutionary phase than, you know, that's kind of what I was thinking when you said that. And I think it's also really telling about you and your personality that you send that to the author, because so many of us, that reaching out quality that you have, that next step action orientation that you have, I think is unusual, special, and I think it's also inspirational for myself and for people listening.
Absolutely. Reaching out to the people that inspire you is more meaningful to that person than you'll ever know. It's
That's really
amazing.
cool. Okay.
It's turning to a friend that inspired you and sending them a quick note and saying, "Oh my gosh, what you said stuck with me all week." You know, thank
Favorite
you.
movie?
Well, when I was a kid, it was Dances with Wolves. I wanted to be Kevin Costner and write and direct movies.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I really liked Julie and Julia, where it told a story of the Julia Childs and this other woman wanting to incorporate what she learned from her mentor, because I'm always trying to incorporate what I learned from my mentors. Recently, what popped in my mind, and I have no idea why, was the movie Yesterday, where this um, actor that also played Slumdog Millionaire, Indian actor, uh, was one of the few people on the planet after a freak accident that remembered all the Beatles music, and they were wiped off the planet. So he had to recreate all the songs,
I never
and he
saw that. I heard about it.
definitely check it out. It's a neat story.
That is neat. Favorite trait in another person?
Trait: the ability to listen and share ideas.
Nice. And then what is your perfect day?
It depends what country I'm in, or if I'm walking around Doylestown and just running into friends and spontaneously having the most awe-inspiring conversations, and maybe eating some really delicious food, and journaling and coaching, working with some amazing clients, and maybe going on a bike ride with my husband, getting a massage, of course.
Nice. Really nice. Well, I have to say, Ruth, there are so many things that you've brought up. You're just going to have to be a reoccurring guest because I would love to talk further. Just, I think it's, I was thinking, I wonder what role your twin plays in your life. I wonder if that's a part of your life now, or is that just something that you kind of say this happened and you move on? I think that's
I've never
fascinating.
really talked to my twin, but I've had different intuitive people say that she's still energetically still with me. And I feel like a lot of my creativity stems from having that like gusto, like, all right, I was given this opportunity to continue on this plane.
Mm,
What shall I do with it?
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Really, I'm gonna go play with ChatGPT after talking to you. I really am, and I hope that other people do the same. And I love your mix of creativity and inspiration and self-awareness and action. I love that whole package. Um, yeah, I appreciate you. So thank you, Ruth.
And I want to say how much I appreciate you and having this opportunity to have this conversation and being neighbors. How long have you been in this neighborhood?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think 2007. I don't do
Okay,
math. Unlike Jason, I'm not an engineer, so I just say the year I did something and then leave the math to other people.
so we moved in 2006. So all these
Okay.
years we've just waved at each other. I never had such a deep, heartfelt conversation except a week or two ago when we decided to do this interview. I mean, we had maybe a couple of them, but
Sure.
I encourage everybody to talk to their neighbors, find out how brilliant the people next door are. You
I
include.
really love that. That can be an action item for everybody listening. Look at the people around you, whether it's your neighbors or the person in the checkout line or, um,
Could be
you
your
know,
future spouse, like my parents.
what was that?
Could be your future spouse, like my parents.
Is that how they met in the checkout
Yeah,
line?
in the checkout line of a Woolworth store in Dallas, Texas. Yeah.
I
Just
mean, just
see
think
what
if there
happens
were
when you
no
talk to people.
And that's why you're here.
Mhm.
So anyway, thank you so much.
So much. I appreciate you.